People see the victories in January or February or winning division titles. What folks don't see and maybe appreciate is the potting soil and where those victories are planted happens in May and June. It's like writing code for the program to win championships. It's OTAs. And this Defending the Kingdom, the ABCs of OTAs. And it's all brought to you by Ticketmaster.
McKinnon is in at running back. First down and goal to go. Play action fake. Right side throw. Touchdown! Kansas City! McCole Hardman with the catch on the right side. A 3-yard touchdown pass in overtime.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs, along with senior team reporter Matt McMullen. The Chiefs, we know what they've done, winning 8 straight AFC West titles, 3 Super Bowl championships in the last 5 years, playing in 4 Super Bowls. But what I think is underappreciated, maybe by most fans of the NFL and some NFL teams, are what the Chiefs get done at this time of year during OTAs.
I think it's so important, and it's an opportunity to get better. And you see guys like Patrick Mahomes talk about that. Patrick Mahomes is so accomplished. He's achieved so much in his career. But for him to find value in this time says everything you need to know. And what OTAs are, it's different than what we had earlier in the offseason. It's organized team activities, and it's voluntary. You get 10 of these. And what's special about these practices is it's offense versus defense, really for the first time since the Super Bowl ended. The guys arrived in April. All they could do is just weightlifting and meetings and stuff like that. Then for a couple weeks, just individual drills, positional stuff. But over the last 3 weeks during OTAs, finally, we got offensive versus defensive football. And they're not wearing pads. There's no live contact. It's not like actual hitting, but the mental reps are so important right now. And it's truly the foundation for everything we're going to see during training camp and during the year.
There's some limited physical contact, very limited, but hand placement, footwork, timing of routes, choice routes, option routes on offense. And defensively, as creative as Steve Spagnuolo's defense is, you see dress rehearsals of working together and being synchronized. Again, it's writing the code for the programs that lead to championships. We're going to jump into the ABCs of what Matt and I have been observing so far in these OTAs. But before we do that, it's a Defending the Kingdom tradition. Let's jump in our space capsule and go around the earth.
I've got 8 today.
Ooh, 8
All
for
right.
Justin Ross, wide receiver.
There we go. Yeah, who's looked pretty good in OTAs. He has. So here we go. I met Joel at the Royals game a few weeks ago. He is from a place near where you're from. He is from Mankato, Kansas.
Home of the Cougars. Now they're the Rock Hills Grizzlies because they combine with White Rock that combine Esbon and Burr Oak. But yes, the old Mankato Cougars.
Okay. Formerly Jewel Center. I learned that on Wikipedia.
Yeah, way to go.
Yeah, I know, right? Did some research on middle of Kansas.
Yeah, nice job.
Yeah, it was
it's Jewel
cool.
County, by the way. That's why.
Well, that's why Smith Center is Smith Center, right? Center of Smith County. There
we
go.
For sure.
The Royals game was fun. It was the one where they honored the 2014 AL champions, and I made Ellie get there like an hour early so I could sit there like a 12-year-old and watch all the old players come out. It was so much fun. And then afterward, I was getting a hot dog and met Joel. So shout out to Joel. I met Tyler while I was doing some grocery shopping the other day. Shout out to you, Tyler. We heard from Rolando in the Philippines. The Philippines is really quickly becoming a hotbed for DTK.
Well, my gaffe, no, it's on me. It is in the Northern Hemisphere. Barely, right? It's
I support it. I thought
it's
it
not
was
exactly in Iceland. So it's big geographical mess up on my part. But yes, the Philippines, we love the Philippines in Defending the Kingdom.
Well, Rolando pointed out because the whole "where are the Philippines" conversation kind of took on a life of its own. They don't have 4 seasons, as you would expect. They just have a wet and a dry season, but it is in the Northern Hemisphere.
Barely.
We heard from Reed. Now, Reed spent a couple of years in, is it Wrocław? How do you say it?
Wrocław.
Wrocław. Okay.
Wrocław, I'm pretty sure it's Wrocław, which is Poland, but very near the German border. Yes, home of the Panthers, home of the Panthers of the European League of American Football.
Now, Reed said your pronunciation was very good and better than most European airports. So good for you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
man. I'm working on it.
Pat yourself on the back. We heard from Mark in Montana, otherwise known as Chiefs Kingdom North. Brian is in Kearney, Nebraska. also known as Chiefs Kingdom on the Prairie.
Bearcats.
Not far from you as well, right?
Yep. University of Nebraska Lopers, the Antelopes.
There we go. That's a great nickname.
I love it.
I also met Jameson and his wife Christine at a concert over the weekend. They're awesome. Met them before in the locker room club. Awesome couple. Talked some Chiefs football for a while. Shout out to you both. And then shout out to my neighbor Jeff. So not too long ago, when we had like those 80-mile-per-hour winds come through Kansas City, I lost power for 2 days. And I had some big limbs like fall in my front yard. And I don't have like the power tools necessary to like saw up these limbs. I need to get them, but I don't. And I came home from work one day, and Jeff was already doing it all for me. And I jumped in and hung out with Jeff. Jeff's the best. So shout out to you, Jeff, neighbor of the year.
Why do we love the Chiefs Kingdom is that kind of story.
Yeah, right?
That's awesome. He just did it.
I'm
just going to do it to help out old Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I've got a few. Went to the Royals game, too, Royals-Padres on Sunday, the walk-off for the Royals. But a guy comes up, and he's from Bangkok, Thailand.
Wow.
And he's a DTK fan. And he listens to the games, and then DTK guy, he goes, hey, it's you're it. So, like, tell Matt hi. I always get to tell Matt hi.
Well, hello.
Right? And I got a great letter from one of the prominent architect here in Kansas City. And it was a very nice letter, but he's like a DTK nut. And it's always in parentheses, tell Matt hi. So we're telling Matt hi right now.
Hello, everyone.
And another
Wow.
story, interesting story. I got another one. This is where we run into people, right? Another Defending the Kingdom season ticket holder, if you will. He's a Kingdom defender. His name's Elias Butterfield, mid-20s. He's going to try to walk on at K-State to play football. Now,
He has the name for
he
it.
played at Hutchinson Central Christian, I think is the school. Yeah, the kid's a stud. He's married.
Okay.
He's going to have a child in December, and he's going to try to walk on the K-State football team. And he listens to every word of Defending the Kingdom. So he can't tell Matt hi. Again, I always get to tell Matt hi. So, but anyway, I found that as an interesting story. Like, wow, okay, go get him,
And
man.
what position is he?
He's going to be like a linebacker type. He looks very much like a Leo Chenal.
Elias Butterfield is a great sports name.
Isn't that an awesome name?
If it doesn't work out in football, he should be a baseball player because it's a great baseball name, too.
Elias Butterfield.
Yeah.
So anyway, go get him, buddy.
All right.
Butterfield. But anyway, we're going to jump into the ABCs of OTAs and why the Chiefs have been maybe the best team in the NFL in the now 12th year under Andy Reid, and why it's led to the winningest team in the NFL. That's empirical in that span, and especially the past 5 years. But what is more less empirical and more qualitative here is what happens during these OTAs. And the first part of the ABCs of OTAs is attacking it. Andy Reid attacks him. You mentioned Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes attacks OTAs as if it's a game. He does it with training camp, but in OTAs in June, he is approaching it where every snap matters. I even said to him something, private. I go, dude, I love the way you attack it. He goes, well, I'm kind of competitive. Like,
Really?
Oh, really?
Didn't know that.
Gosh, wow, thanks. But I go, I'm like, no, the way you hit this every day, and I don't think anybody hits it harder than Patrick Mahomes. But that also tells you what that energy does for the rest of his teammates to see if he's doing it, why wouldn't I do it?
Yeah. So I looked this up earlier today. A lot of people already know this, but it's bonkers. Did you know Patrick has more playoff wins as a quarterback than several NFL franchises have?
Yeah.
He has 15 postseason wins, which is already the third most all-time among starting quarterbacks. Only Joe Montana and Tom Brady have more. Montana has one more. Think about that. Patrick Mahomes is one playoff win behind tying Joe Montana for the second most of all time. It's all to say that he's accomplished a lot in the NFL. It would be very easy, and I don't think anyone would really bat an eye if he didn't show up for any of these. They'd be like, oh yeah, he's Patrick Mahomes, it's fine. But it's the opposite. He's the first one here every day because he wants to get better. And it says so much about him and the competitor that he is. One of the reasons he's so good beyond the physical stuff is his football IQ, his mentality, the attitude he brings every single day, stuff that is chosen. Like, you can just decide to be that way, and that's the way that he is. And yeah, it rubs off on everyone around him because if you're a young player and you see Patrick Mahomes going all out during OTAs, you're going to go even harder. So we're so blessed to have Patrick Mahomes as the leader of this football team, not just because of what he does on the field, but because it's May and June, and he's being the leader that he is right now.
We're not going to give out government secrets on Defending the Kingdom, But we will tell you a little bit about what we're seeing. And one of the things, and this relates to Patrick attacking OTAs, is you want to see how Hollywood Brown would integrate with Pat. And again, it goes back to writing the code for the program or planting in the potting soil. And this is Hollywood Brown now. It's coming from a different program, a couple different ones in his background in the NFL. How will he react of like, wow, we're doing this in OTAs? I've been very impressed with Hollywood Brown. Don't go nuts about it. I'm just telling you, I'm impressed. And him working together with Patrick Mahomes, because as Patrick attacks OTAs, I'm seeing something very similar in Hollywood Brown.
I have 3 words for you, and with a hyphen in one of them. It's ball tracking ability.
Oof.
His ball tracking is elite, and it's been something fun to watch. I think we all knew that he had speed, but on a lot of these deep routes, if it's a little underthrown or overthrown, Hollywood has the ability to adjust, to track the ball, and to catch it in stride, which is something that's going to help this offense exponentially. It's a skill that is hard. It's difficult. Not a lot of guys have it. Some players have straight line speed, but they don't have the ball tracking. It's always something that made Tyreek Hill such a great player in Kansas City. And not comparing the two, kind of totally different sorts of players, but the ball tracking of Hollywood Brown, in addition to the speed and the different routes he can run, is something I'm very excited about.
On the defensive side, I've been impressed with Justin Reed and Drew Tranquill. Now, why do I mention them in attacking OTAs? Again, these are guys that are coming from different backgrounds. So this is Justin Reed's 3rd year in Steve Spagnuolo's defense, 2 Super Bowl championships, looking for a 3rd. And Drew Tranquill's 2nd. Tranquill was a Charger. We know Justin started as a Texan. But to see those guys in these OTAs in specific attack them like the offensive guys we've mentioned. Again, this is a complex defense. It's why there's kind of a long play learning curve here. But those 2 guys, as veterans that are coming from different cultures coming in, who have embraced this culture of attacking OTAs, I've been really excited about those 2 guys.
And George Karlaftis, too.
Mm-hmm.
George Karlaftis is on the upward trajectory right now. It's hard in this kind of camp because it's essentially a passing camp. Like I said earlier, there's not a lot of actual live contact, and they're not wearing pads, so it's hard to evaluate the offensive and defensive lines. But he looks fast. He looks strong. Like, he looks like a guy who's about to have a really, really great season. And he kind of already had his breakout year last year, but I think he's on the trek to stardom. So George Karlaftis is someone who has impressed me as well defensively. You know what's kind of funny, though, about these practices is the offense and the defense, both side thinks the other has the advantage due to the rules. So I mentioned it's a passing camp. So Coach Nagy and Coach Reed have talked about, well, it's a passing camp, so there's no run game, so kind of advantage defense. But then Steve Spagnuolo will say, we can't do anything. We can't hit the quarterback. He's wearing a yellow jersey. We can't press. We can't hit. We can't do any of these things. It's advantage offense. So both sides think that the other has the advantage, but they both look good so far. I mean, you want to see both sides winning from time to time. And yeah, I mean, with some examples that we've given with Hollywood on the offensive side and some of these veteran guys on the defensive side, just seeing some really good things.
I'm going to talk about George later in our 3rd to see, but the first one is A, attacking OTAs. We've given examples of that. B is breakthroughs. Who is a breakthrough player? Now, we can't wait. You have to wait till training camp when the pads do come on to see if it's a true breakthrough, but we get inklings of OTA breakthroughs. And I'm going to start with Nico Remigio, a wide receiver. They've given him 81 now, which makes him look more like a wide receiver than 27, although Guy Moore wears 24. And we've seen team numbers for receivers and single-digit numbers, which you see with the Chiefs. But Remigio is one where, that guy. And he kind of did this a year ago, and then he got injured. And so, because you and I both talked about him last year in OTAs and training camp, but to see, well, what's he got this year coming off the injury? I don't know about you, but I'm seeing enough where it deserves mention on this podcast.
He has popped every day that we've watched, and he just looks the part. He just looks like he belongs out there. He looks great off the injury. He was a shoulder injury in camp last year when he was making a real case to make the team. I mean, he was one of those training camp darlings and then got hurt, put on IR all season, but he's back now. He's healthy and just looking really good. He has some juice to him. Like, he just has the it factor when I'm watching him play, and he has to translate that to when the pads are on. But there's something about him that when he's out there, there's just an energy to him. We're joking around about, like, draft catchphrases, but I use the word twitchy. He's kind of twitchy, like there's just something about him that he's able to pluck the ball out of the sky, and he's powerful after the catch as well. He's kind of like a running back. He's got really strong legs, like thick legs, and uses those to his advantage. So, yeah, Nico's a player who I cannot wait to watch in training camp.
The other thing about Nico is there's no wasted motion with him. All of his movements, you mentioned twitchy, they're also kind of this tight movement where a lot of receivers you will waste, and a nanosecond in the NFL means everything. But it's sometimes the long striders, that nanosecond allows the defensive player with Nico, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Don't go crazy here again. Just know that he's caught our attention is the fact that no wasted motion, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Something's happening, and if either one of the 4 of those counts, and that usually means the potential to bode well for a player who can contribute, especially in this offense.
Yeah, he's smooth and fluid, 2 words that kind of make sense when watching him play. And one drill stood out to me. It's one of those where there's a lot of individual and positional drills during OTAs, and you have to kind of figure out what you want to watch because so much is going on at the same time. But one of them was where they were doing the receivers and the quarterbacks were doing a quick little 10-yard hook route, and then maybe they cut inside. They kind of moved their feet a little, shuffle, and then cut in. And a couple of guys fell down. And you could tell on the second rep, those guys were going a little bit slower, didn't want to fall down. But Nico was going 100% the entire time and just really powerful, really fluid, didn't fall down, caught the ball in stride. Just really impressive. And during OTAs, you have to look for the little things like that because you can't do the true football activities with the pads not on yet. But the little things like that, they're going to translate later on. So, again, I mean, it's June. Who knows what's going to happen? But right now, Nico has picked up right where he left off last summer.
Yep, and he's a special teams contributor. With the new kickoff rule, who knows? Because, again, as I tweeted out, nobody knows what they're doing with that. Everybody's kind of tinkering. But Nico looks like a guy who could be, because of his power, the lower body power that you mentioned, and the quick twitch movement and no wasted motion, because kickoffs are going to be that quick. And so he kind of lends himself to that, potentially. So we'll see. Another one's Mike Caliendo. Remember, Nick Allegretti has to be replaced. And you're going, well, Nick Allegretti, he's moved on to the Washington Commanders. But Nick Allegretti had value here as being the middle relief guy in the bullpen, to give a baseball analogy. But Caliendo's had a lot of reps with Joe Thuney's injury. And for Mike now, it's a chance for him to jump up and get maximizing every one of these OTA reps.
A phrase that you use often is crockpot guys, and Caliendo's the ultimate crockpot guy. He's someone that was a UDFA out of Western Michigan a couple of years ago, spent some time on the practice squad, spent some time on the active roster last year. And if you don't know his name, it's understandable, but he's a player that is helping us win. And he helped us win last year, and he has an opportunity to help us win this upcoming year. And for players like that, it's difficult to step in right away as a rookie. That's why you call him a crockpot guy. You keep them around the system. They learn the system. They get better and better, kind of move their way up the depth chart. And he has a chance here to kind of take over that role that Nick Allegretti left, which is that jack of all trades, Swiss Army knife offensive lineman, which is super important, as we saw in the Super Bowl, right? You have Joe Thuney, the best left guard in the NFL, gets hurt against Buffalo. You got to go play the Ravens and Justin Madubuike in Baltimore, and you don't skip a beat. You plug Nick Allegretti in there. He's really good, does the same in the Super Bowl. Well, Mike Caliendo has an opportunity to be that guy. He's out there competing with rookies like Hunter Norzad and C.J. Hansen as well. But I feel really good about the interior of the Chiefs' offensive line right now in terms of that young depth, and Caliendo is at the top of that list at the moment.
Again, we're discussing in this DTK the ABCs of OTAs. First is attacking the OTAs. It's a mindset, basically, led by Mahomes and Reed. Secondly are the breakthrough guys. And I'm going to close out the breakthrough guys, potentially, the entire tight end room. When I see that collection of guys, there's 6 tight ends in camp. We know about Kels. We know he's going to the Hall of Fame. His numbers are ridiculous. But where's he going to get help? We've seen Noah Gray kind of grow. Really excited about Jared Wiley. We've talked about him. But even an Irv Smith. But to see that room, I'm going to just mention the whole tight end room and its potential could be a breakthrough.
And Noah Gray is part of that.
Yep.
Noah Gray is one of the more underappreciated members of this team that does a lot of the dirty work, and he's consistent. Like, Noah Gray will go out there and get you 3 catches for 40 yards every single game, not blowing up the stat sheet. But if you look back at those catches, they're often important ones. So this tight end room is exciting. And Wiley is a player who I was really, really impressed with during rookie minicamp. And the challenge for him was to carry that into OTAs, and I think he's done that. Like, Wiley is a player who I think can help us right away if he can keep that momentum going. And it's really two areas that I've noticed. It's red zone, which should be no surprise because he was the best red zone tight end in the nation last year in the FBS. 5 red zone touchdowns last year, led all FBS tight ends. But he also is really good up the seam, so seam routes. Over the middle of the field. And that was Travis Kelce's bread and butter early in his career. And, of course, he's like the best in NFL history to do it from that position. So Jared Wiley, when you have a player who's 6'6", 250 pounds, who can move and catch the football with success, and he's learning from the greatest tight end of all time in Travis Kelce, that's exciting. I have one more guy to mention, if that's okay.
Sure.
And this is a player that I bet a lot of people don't know much about, but his name is Trey Dean, a safety, a second-year player out of Florida. He was on the Jets practice squad last year after going undrafted, but he's a player who's kind of impressed me during OTAs. A lot of experience at Florida. He started 40 games there as kind of a jack-of-all-trades defensive back, played some corner, played free safety, strong safety, a little bit of everything. But he's looked the part, I think, during OTAs. Specifically last week, he had an interception near the sideline during 7-on-7. Really athletic, impressive play. And then followed it up with a PBU during team drills. So Trey Dean, I think, is a player to watch in training camp as well.
Good one. That whole safety room, I get excited about that group. Seeing Brian Cook start to come back from the injury, too, gets me
Nazi Johnson.
Fired up. Let's mention Hicks, too, out of Washington State. They were both Jaden Hicks coming out of this draft class, who now people are saying was the greatest value of any team in the league in the draft. So, A, attacking OTAs. B, possible breakthroughs. B, breakthroughs. You always see that in OTAs to lead into camp. But then C would be the continued emergence. C, continued emergence of the leadership of the 2021 and the 2022 draft classes. What are they doing now in their fourth or third year, as it were, with those two groups? The 21 class, in watching them in OTAs, and this is Nick Bolton, this is Creed Humphrey, this is Trey Smith. Can they continue to elevate their game? And, Matt, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, and especially, even not being just rah-rah guys, but now taking kind of the mantle of the team. The 22 class, which you and I bragged about these guys ever since they were drafted. Keep in mind, these guys are 43-0 in the playoffs. They're 43-0 in the playoffs in their first 2 years. You mentioned Karlaftis. Physically, and I don't know if it's the work with Tamba Hali, but I concur. He looks quicker, faster, more decisive. And, yes, you see that in OTAs where, again, hand placement, foot placement, explosive moves, having a bevy of moves. Karlaftis is exciting. Trent McDuffie, All-Pro last year, is emerging in one of the great corners of this league. I mentioned Brian Cook coming back from injury. But you can continue, go down the list with these guys. Brian Cook coming back, same with Leo Chenal. But that group now, the 21 and 22 continued emergence of those guys, not just physically, but what they mean to this team moving forward from an emotional and mental standpoint, really excites me because I'm seeing it almost every day I watch OTAs.
It's so fun to look back at some of our podcast episodes before the 2022 draft because we were talking about the opportunity that the draft was. I think at the time we had 10 draft picks. We just traded Tyreek Hill, and we were saying this is a opportunity for a team that's in the middle of a championship window to kind of reload. And looking back at it, I think that 2022 draft class might go down as like one of the greatest ever for any team. That might sound like an exaggeration, but it's really not because you mentioned that those players have not lost a playoff game. They've known nothing but winning Super Bowls over their 2 years as professionals, and they've contributed to them. And think about the Chiefs' 2 first-round picks in McDuffie and Karlaftis. I mean, legitimately have a chance to be 2 superstars this year. Trent McDuffie's a top 5 corner in the NFL.
Yep.
It's like right away. And George Karlaftis, as I mentioned, is ascending into a star in this league. And you get those 2 players in the first round. You had guys like Isaiah Pacheco later in the draft, Jalen Watson, Leo Chenal, Brian Cook is going to get healthy this year. Nazi Johnson going to get healthy this year. I mean, just so many good players. Joshua Williams has helped this team win. So, yeah, I mean, you look at these draft classes, they've been so important to helping the Chiefs do what they've done. I mention this all the time, but, you know, Mahomes and Kelsey and Chris Jones, those are the Hall of Famers and the cornerstones. But if you don't have the players around them, it's very difficult to win. And Brett Veach, the reason he's the best GM in the NFL is he's found both of those things. You have your Hall of Famers, and you have these players that have a chance to maybe be in the Hall of Fame one day based on the trajectory that they're on, but just really good players that you found throughout the draft. I have a fun note for you regarding the 2021 draft, because you mentioned how the 2022 and 23 classes have never lost a playoff game. Well, Nick Bolton, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, Noah Gray, those guys are all each 9-1 in the playoffs. That's a lot of playoff games. Only 8 players in NFL history have appeared in 10 or more playoff games during their first 3 years in the NFL, and the Chiefs have half of them in those 4 players, and they're 9-1. It's just nuts. Any idea who the other 4 came from? They all came from one team.
Patriots?
No, I was surprised. Because it's tricky, because you have to play a lot of games.
How far are we going back? Yeah, you got to go. So it's not necessarily a champion. It's a team that's played a lot of games.
You got to go to the Super Bowl a lot, and oftentimes you got to be playing in the wild card game. It's tough. The Patriots always had to bye, you know.
So how far? Steelers?
No.
How far are we going back?
It's the early 90s.
Bills.
It's the Bills.
The Bills.
But then these 4 guys, and it's amazing if the Chiefs can go back to the Super Bowl this upcoming year, we're going to have a shot for the 2022 class to be in that same group.
But to see what they've done to continue to grow is what fires me up.
Yeah.
They're not plateauing. None of those guys. None of them are plateauing.
They're getting better.
And I'll even throw in Jack Cochran, the undrafted free agent who gets thrown. There you go, the Yote.
Go Yotes, baby.
Throw him in that group. And, he's going to have a fight for a spot on his team, but he's become special teams leader. He's had more of a role as we got to replace Willie Gay Jr., right? So looking at the different ways they use linebackers and the different schemes that they use. So the fact that the 21 and 22 classes, and they become now the helpers of the 23 and 24 classes. But I like what you said. We know about the Pro Football Hall of Famers, and Chris will be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We know Kelson and Patrick will too. But the greatest teams of all time have had the Hall of Famers and then a group of probable Hall of Famers right behind them. And it's not out of the realm of possibility to look at that group of the Bolton, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, Noah Gray. Not saying they're going to be all in the Hall of Fame, but some might. And then you followed up with the Karlaftis. McDuffie kind of fits that role. And that's what the Chiefs have right now. But the reason we're so excited in seeing it is because of OTAs. Yeah, I'm sorry. All apologies to Allen Iverson. Practice? We're talking about practice? Yeah, Alan, we're talking about practice. But, Matt, you and I get excited to watch every one of these. But we've learned over time what these days mean.
I get kind of dorky with this, but I look back on when we were watching OTAs the past 2 years, one of the first days in May, watching the guys go out there and attack it. And in retrospect, that was a Super Bowl champion just starting their journey that would last 8 months, that would end the first time in Glendale and then last year in Las Vegas. And this is when that journey begins. It's right now. Of course, you can't do everything. There's no tackling, no hitting. But this is when the journey begins. And hopefully, in 8 or 9 months, we're reflecting on this time and talking about how that was the beginning of another championship.
The ABCs of OTAs, attacking OTAs. The Chiefs do it better than anybody in the league. They're not playing Frisbee golf or going to go to Top Golf and, have fun. B, breakthroughs. Potential breakthroughs. We're seeing that. C, the continued emergence of leadership from younger guys on this team that have known, in many ways, unprecedented success or success that has been rarely reached earlier in their careers. So, yes, OTA matters. It's the potting soil. It's writing the code for the program that wins.